Welcome to the Spring 2012 International Speech and Evaluation Contest for TV Toastmasters. My name is Rick Darren, and I'm the contest chairperson. Thank you for tuning in, and all of you in the studio audience, thank you for coming to help us celebrate the speeches and the evaluation contestants today. As the contest chair, my role is a simple one. I help get people to volunteer to fill the numerous positions that are necessary to run the contest. And then after that, I turn it over to everybody else, which is the best way to do it. We here at TV Toastmasters meet on the first Thursday of every month at 6 p.m. and the third Saturday at 9 a.m. at the Anderson Center, 7850 5 Mile Road. If you'd like some more information about TV Toastmasters, visit our website, www.toastmasters.com. That's www.toastmasters.com. It is my pleasure to introduce our Toastmaster for today's contest, Sheila Mudd-Baker. Sheila is an area governor. She's our current secretary and has held numerous positions in clubs all over Cincinnati. Thank you so much, Sheila.
Thank you, Mr. Contest Chair. Why do we have contests? A very good question. You're thinking, isn't it bad enough you have to stand up in front of a camera? Well, we have an international contest every year, and the purpose is to provide a speaker an opportunity to improve speaking abilities and to recognize the very best as an encouragement to all. It's also to provide an opportunity to learn by observing the most proficient speakers who have benefited from their Toastmaster training. So, our very first speaker is Steve Ahrenholz. Benevolent, Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our honored guests, both those in the studio as well as those looking in from home. Merriam-Webster defines benevolence as the disposition to do good, an act of kindness, a generous gift. Many of us have been the recipients of benevolent actions. I know I have. Do you ever think about ways that you're benevolent? Then combine that with a benevolent gift that is both anonymous and very personal. 5 years ago, I had an opportunity to see benevolence in this fashion on a first-hand basis. It was one of those dreary winter evenings, one of those days where it's gray above, gray around, and gray below. My sister Julie called me that evening from Wisconsin to let me know that our mom had been admitted to the hospital for tests to try and determine why she'd been experiencing such extreme fatigue, aches, and chronically enlarged lymph nodes. It was one of those calls that you have where you don't remember a lot about the call itself, except that you know life as you know it is never going to be the same again. Mom was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. Over the course of the next couple of weeks, she received numerous platelet donations, or numerous units of platelets, to try and bring her platelet count up to the point where she could begin receiving chemotherapy. 24 days later, she got to go home. Did you realize that it takes 3 to 4 units of whole blood to produce enough platelets that would be a therapeutic dose for a platelet recipient? The same amount of platelets can be obtained from one apheresis donor. I had a lot of time during my 8-hour drive between Milwaukee and Cincinnati to ponder a variety of things. One of them was the helplessness that you feel at not being able to do more for someone who has done so much for you in your own life. But one of the other things that I would think about is, who are these donors that give of themselves and their time? Why do they donate? And why do they continue to donate? I really did appreciate the unidentified donors that gave platelets that my mom could use. I saw numerous benevolent acts over the course of the next couple of months for both my mom and my dad. Mom began her chemotherapy, and it didn't really go very well for her. What was really hard was when the doctors had determined that the chemotherapy wasn't working. I think the thing that was even harder to accept was the fact that Mom decided the side effects and everything weren't really worth pursuing all kinds of additional treatments. That was pretty tough to take. Mom passed away later that May, 5 years ago, 3 days after Mom and Dad's 59th wedding anniversary. I decided that one of the things that I could do to honor my mother was to donate platelets. I had been a blood donor off and on throughout the years, but I'd never seriously considered becoming a apheresis donor. Cincinnati, the Hawksworth Blood Center here, needs to collect 350 units of whole blood and 40 units of platelets a day to fulfill the needs of patients in the greater Cincinnati area. I often think about my mom when I sign up to give platelets, and then I go and during my donation, because it does take about 2 hours, at least for me to do it. And they may take 1, 2, or now they even can take 3 units of platelets. I'll think to myself, I wonder who's getting my platelets. It's a very personal gift that is given to someone who you will probably never meet. One of the things that Hawksworth does that I think is really neat is they started sending letters out to the donors that express their appreciation for the gift that you've given, and they provide a little bit of information as to which hospitals were able to use your donation that day. And sometimes they'll indicate, if it's like Cincinnati Children's Hospital Medical Center, that it was some children that were the beneficiaries of your donation. And an example of just how much in platelets and blood can be used in certain things. A bone marrow transplant recipient needs 120 units of plasma and 20 units of whole blood. A heart surgery may require 6 units of whole blood and 6 units of plasma. So I encourage you to become either a whole blood donor or a platelet donor. It's a benevolent gift that you can give to someone you'll probably never meet. Legendary basketball coach John Wooden said, "You can't live a perfect day until you do something for someone who will never be able to repay you." Madam Toastmaster?
Thank you, Steve.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well. There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease...
Freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
Our next speaker, Michelle Hennekes. It's a privilege. It's a privilege, Michelle Hennekes.
fellow Toastmasters, honored guests, judges, those looking in from home, thank you. It was a typical Tuesday morning at work. I was sitting at my desk, and I heard that usual chime that indicates I've gotten another email. So out of habit, I looked to see what's come into my inbox. Another forward. I have to admit, I'm not a big fan of forwarded emails. In fact, I very rarely ever even read them, let alone open them. But what caught my attention was the person who sent it. It was my sister-in-law. Mandy puts in about 60 hours a week minimum at her job and raises 4 girls under the age of 6. So she barely has enough time to tie her shoes, let alone to send a forward. So I was a bit intrigued on what the content was. I clicked on the email. And this was the first email in a long time I read from start to finish. It was a chronological depiction of how women in America received the right to vote. It outlined the remarkable but little-known story of what these women really went through and put on the line for us, the ladies in this room, to be able to vote. We all know that women received the right to vote in 1920 via the 19th Amendment. But do we really know the sacrifices that were made so that we could all step into a poll booth? The National Women's Party was founded in 1916 by 2 passionate and dynamic women, Alice Paul and Lucy Burns. And in 1917, they implemented many different tactics. They did peaceful demonstrations, they did parades, they did pickets. They wanted to have their voices heard. So in 1917, they conducted the first picket at the White House. This is the first time in American history anyone had picketed the president's home. So President Woodrow Wilson wasn't too happy. In fact, we had just entered World War I, so he had a lot on his mind. These 150 protesters soon became known as the Silent Sentinels. They held up signs asking, "President Wilson, how long do you expect us to wait?" Or, "Wilson is against women." They didn't say much, very peaceful, but yet they all got arrested. They were brought into prison. President Wilson didn't want to have to deal with it. So 33 of these women who were imprisoned were brutally beaten, even though they were peacefully demonstrating. What did they do wrong? 40 prison guards with weapons, imagine this, against 33 women. Not really a fair matchup. But they didn't back down. They actually went on a hunger strike. They refused to eat, they sat in their prison cells, and they stood strong. So what happened? They were force-fed. It was a really brutal situation. President Wilson actually tried to get a psychiatrist to declare Alice Paul insane so that she would be institutionalized and out of his hair. But inspiringly enough, the doctor said, "She's courageous and strong. She's not insane." He looked at President Wilson and he said, "Courage in women is often mistaken for insanity." So words of these brutal beatings and forced beatings leaked out, and the American public caught their attention. These women, who were known as the suffragettes, later became known as the iron-jawed women because they refused to eat, had really made an impact. So what was President Wilson to do? He needed to do something to strengthen the U.S. democracy, so he reversed his opinion and supported the amendment for women to gain the right to vote. But even though he did this, the Senate still shot it down. However, the next year, in 1918, the amendment was reintroduced. And by 1920, 35 states had ratified the amendment. One more was needed. This would become Tennessee when a legislator received a telegram from his mother encouraging him to vote. Mother does know best. So on August 26, 1920, women in America, 20 million women received the right to vote. So it's pretty clear and evident that women were considered third-class citizens at this time. Comically enough, it was seen that if women were given the right to vote, they would lose sight of their traditional roles as wives and mothers. Can you believe it? My great-grandmother didn't have the right to vote. It profounds me. I mean, I can't believe not having a voice in my government. So, here we are. Women are still not going out to the polls. Refresh my memory why some women won't go out this election year. Because it's raining. They don't know the candidates well enough. They're just too busy. What would Lucy Burns and Alice Paul think of how we use our right to vote? So men, please share this heroic story with your sisters and your wives. Ladies, tell it to your sisters. Voting is not an obligation, it's a privilege. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle.
All the education in the world won't help you get ahead in life if you can't express your ideas effectively. Every day, competition for advancement gets tougher and tougher. You need an edge. A Toastmasters club can give you that edge. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters gives you the confidence to express your ideas to anyone. Get the Toastmasters edge.
The next speaker is Paul Wessels. Bob and Joe. Bob and Joe. Paul Wessels.
Bob and Joe are criminals. They're very smart and they're very good at what they do, which is robbing convenience stores. Their main strength is cooperation. They know each other like brothers. They knew each other since childhood. Bob and Joe had never been caught because their jobs were so clean and well planned. The most important part of the process, which they knew very well and they practiced constantly, is what to do if they got caught. The procedure was to fully cooperate, not with the police, but with each other. They knew if they kept their mouths shut and they didn't admit to anything, and particularly if they didn't rat on their partner, that the chance of a conviction is much more difficult for the authorities. This time was a little different. Of course, the robbery went off without a hitch, but they were found a couple blocks from the scene of the crime. And they were brought into the police station because they found illegal weapons on them. They were immediately separated, and Bob now sits in the interrogation room. The detective walks in and he says, "Bob, did you know we caught a grocery store or convenience store was robbed about 5 blocks from where we caught you guys, meaning we picked you guys up." They picked them up because they had those illegal weapons. And he says, "You know, we've got you for illegal weapons, and that takes up to 1 year in prison. But we think you guys robbed that convenience store. Our problem is we don't have a shred of evidence that you guys robbed the convenience store." He said, "We're going to need a confession from one or both of you in order to convict you guys. And if we do, that's armed robbery, 5 to 20 years." Bob thinks to himself, of course he knows the code, he thinks to himself, 5 to 20 years? They don't got nothing on us. I'm keeping my mouth shut. So he doesn't say anything. Bob did not anticipate the detective's next statement. His statement was designed to shift the balance between cooperation and competition. The concept, which had been known for many years, since ancient times really, was written down by Merrill Flood in the late 1940s. And it was actually crystallized academically by Albert Tucker in 1950. And he used this particular example that he called the prisoner's dilemma to explain this particular theory. It's now a classic economic theory, and it shows how Bob is about to not cooperate with his buddy Joe and go ahead and admit and confess to armed robbery without a shred of evidence against him. The detective says, we want a confession from both of you guys. Frankly, it makes everything short and sweet, and it saves taxpayer money. So if you both confess, you're going to get convicted, but you're going to be in jail for 5 years. We're going to give you the minimum sentence. Again, Bob sits to him. He thinks, they ain't got nothing on me. My buddy and Joe know each other really well. I'm not saying a word. Doesn't say a word. Detective then says something that gets Bob thinking a little bit differently. He says, oh, by the way, your buddy Joe, if he confesses and you don't, we're going to give him a break for helping us out. He walks. He gets probation. You go to jail for 20 years. And by the way, if you confess and he doesn't, you get to walk probation. He goes to jail for 20 years. Bob is now thinking he's got a real dilemma on his hands. His dilemma is whether or not to cooperate with his buddy Joe. But what the detective has done is he's created a situation where it became rational for Bob to discontinue his cooperation with Joe. What I'm going to do is show you, I'm going to try to explain to you, I'm going to show you the published numbers, but don't let these numbers get you carried away. I just want to show you a couple numbers that was published by this theory. I just want you to look here. This is a matrix between confess, don't confess. And if you look at the 1-1 down here, all I want to show you is the 1-1. Bob and Joe are absolutely correct. If they do not confess, this is the number of years jail time. If they do not confess as a group, they get the least amount of jail time. But what the detective did was he actually presented it to a point where, as individuals looking through Bob's eyes, he realizes it's best for him to confess no matter what Joe does. Bottom line is, in the end, they get a confession from both of these guys. They find out who did it. They save taxpayer money. It's called the prisoner's dilemma. It's used all over the place. I want to give you a better, more simple example. Hockey. Every hockey player is safer because they all have to wear helmets. Before it was required to wear a helmet, a few of the hockey players didn't wear helmets because they got an advantage. They could actually see better. And they got a performance advantage. So it became rational for individuals not to cooperate with the group. Prisoner's dilemma. Soon nobody was wearing hockey helmets because they all wanted that performance edge. And what it did two things. It negated the performance edge because nobody was wearing helmets. And two, it made everyone less safe. So in this case, everyone was forced to cooperate with each other when they were caught in that dilemma. But because they made it a rule that everyone had to wear helmets. But in other cases, and there's many other cases out there, where it's not so easy to get everyone to cooperate when they're caught in this classic dilemma between individuals and groups. For example, countries reducing CO2 emissions, countries stockpiling nuclear weapons, athletes using performance-enhancing drugs, and OPEC controlling oil prices. These examples are obviously much more complicated than just a prisoner's dilemma. Yet this theory has proven to be a good starting point to explain these situations and actually help solve these complicated issues.
Thank you, Paul.
What future do you envision for yourself? What dreams do you have? If you want your dreams to come true, you must have confidence in yourself and your abilities. A Toastmasters Club can help you build that confidence. A low-cost learning experience for men and women. Toastmasters shows you how to express yourself clearly and effectively. Make your dreams a reality. Join a Toastmasters Club.
Welcome back to the contest for TV Toastmaster. The evaluation contest has two purposes, according to Toastmasters International: to encourage development of evaluation skills and to recognize the best in achievement to all. To provide an opportunity to learn by observing the more proficient evaluators who have benefited from their Toastmasters training. Today, we will watch 4 persons evaluate a test speaker. Our test speaker today, Kay Fittis, ask for lemon drops. Ask for lemon drops, Kay Fittis.
I have met the enemy, and the enemy is me. Isn't it a terrible thing when you realize that one of the greatest things that's standing between you and a success in your life is, in fact, you? But let me say this. It's really not your fault. It's really not my fault. The reality is the things that all of us learned in childhood work against us every day in the workplace. How does that happen? How do we get into this dilemma? Well, go back with me in time. Go back with me to a little town in southern Illinois, Cobden, Illinois. Burgeoning population of 500, woohoo! And it is a sultry summer afternoon in July, and I'm going hand in hand with my grandmother to Niebuhr's General Store. We walk in, and the first thing I see over to the side is a gigantic barrel of lemon drops. Now, I absolutely love lemon drops. My 8-year-old little soul craves lemon drops. And I am just about to say, Mama, can I have a lemon drop or 2 or maybe 3 or maybe more, when Mrs. Niebuhr says to my grandmother, Helen, I'm so thrilled that you're with us today here in the store. And my goodness, there's your little granddaughter. I didn't even realize that she was in the store. She is so quiet. My grandmother looks at her and says, Martha, you are so right. She is the sweetest little thing, never hear a peep out of her mouth. In fact, sometimes I even forget that she is in the house. She's a little bit like the wallpaper. Not only that, she said, I can take her anywhere. I don't have to worry, like some grandparents do, that she's going to tug on my skirt and say, Mama, Mama, can I have this or that? She never asks for anything. Well, there go the lemon drops. Fast forward into the world of work. Do you think there's a pretty good likelihood that I am languishing in the background? Do you think I am very visible? And do I get what I want in the workplace? The answer is a resounding no. And some of you may be the same way. Maybe you weren't raised by my grandmother, but you got some of those same messages. In fact, very recently, there was an article in the newspaper. It came from a business journal, and what it said was this. They were giving queries to individuals that were, let's call them up-and-comers, and they were under 40 years of age, and they were asked, what is your personal business philosophy? Your personal business philosophy. And this is actually what one of them said. I quote, work hard and people will notice. Don't concern yourself with who gets the recognition. If you want a surefire, shoot yourself in the foot recipe for not doing well in work, follow that one. So instead, what might you do? Well, you may have to become your very own best press agent. And how in the world do you do that? Well, I have 3 things that you can try immediately, starting Monday morning. Does that sound like a deal? Are you ready? First one. The first thing you may need to do is think about, let me see, where could I get visible? What opportunity could I ask for? And it might be, let me be the introducer for our CEO at the next annual meeting. Or maybe you do a little behind-the-scenes preparation and you create a proposal for the next industry convention. Now, that would get you out there in front of the limelight, wouldn't it? Or maybe you actually go outside of your company. Maybe you volunteer to work for the United Way. Or perhaps you say, I'd like to be the liaison between a community project, my company for the next Make a Difference Day. That gets you out there in front of people. And the third one, this one, you don't even have to ask. All you have to do is show up. Don't we like it when life is easy? Just show up for the holiday party and the company summer picnic. But now I know, right now, some of you are thinking, okay, I do not have time for that kind of trivial stuff. I have 3 kids. I'm going back to school. I have an elderly mother I'm taking care of. It's about working smarter, not harder. And all you have to do is this. You have to do a little bit of homework. I know it's a nasty, dirty word, but sometimes we have to do it. And what are you going to do? You're going to have the opportunity to get face-to-face with the movers and shakers of your company. You're going to be able to go in and talk a little bit about your ideas and your project and have them put your name and your face together. And maybe you'll just go prepared with, let's say, a few questions open-ended to ask your CEO. So they'll know you as a real live human being. If you do that, you will, in fact, become your own best press agent. You will know how to ask for the lemon drops in the workplace, and you will never, ever have to say again, I have met the enemy, and the enemy is me. Thank you, Sheila.
Thank you, Kay.
Name an effective political leader in history who couldn't speak well. There aren't any.
Because when it comes to a disease,
Freedom requires leadership, and leadership requires oratory. You have to speak to be heard.
I have a dream.
It's all about personal growth and guts.
Never give in. Never, never, never.
So, that leaves us time to learn a little more about Kay. So, Kay, you've been a Toastmaster for a while. And I've seen you in several presentations, workshops. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I got into Toastmasters so I could get feedback myself. I'm a professional public speaker. I'm the founder of High Heel Success. I work with women to help them overcome obstacles to their workplace success, and those individuals that are struggling with letting go of some of those behaviors that, in fact, hold back our careers. And I have gotten that, but I've gotten so very much more being a member of Toastmasters. Not only have I gotten phenomenal feedback, I've gotten that great opportunity to try out material and have it fall flat with Toastmasters and not fall flat with a paid audience. And I have, more than anything else, certainly enhanced my leadership skills because I have been an area governor and had some of those opportunities. But the best part of all is the endearing and lifelong friendships that I have made in this organization. Faces that I love seeing time after time after time.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. All right.
We will now start the evaluation contest. Our first competitor, Darren Henderson.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our television audience, and especially Kay. Kay, great job. That was very practical information, very good presentation, and I learned something that I can actually take away. And also I learned something that I actually knew about myself. I think that most of us in our professional lives probably know about ourselves, that a lot of us are not very good about telling people how great we are. That's not a thing that most people like to do, and just not a part of our human nature. But I'd like to talk first about your presentation. First of all, you're very comfortable on stage. I can't believe you used to be a shy little girl, because I didn't pick that up at all when you were up here on the stage. You had great vocal variety, great body language, no notes, and you had a great presence. And if I could think of one word to describe your presentation and your style, it's energetic. You're just a ball of fire. And once again, I can't believe you were a small girl who did not want to speak, and you, as you described, your grandmother talked about you, you were like the wallpaper. I can't believe that. That's amazing. I think that because of that style, you were able to take us back to that small town, and you said the big barrel of lemon drops, so we can just kind of see the small little girl who wanted those lemon drops, but could not get them because she wouldn't speak up. So once again, the presentation part was excellent. Next, I'd like to talk about the content. And I think the presentation is great, very important in any speech, but the greatest presenter in the world can't get past bad content. So let's talk about the content. The content I thought was very good, and this was a self-help topic, for lack of a better term. So sometimes that can be somewhat dry if not done properly. I think the great thing you did, though, is that you started out with a personal anecdote, which kind of brought us into it from a personal standpoint initially. So I thought that was a great tactic. You started with a personal anecdote, then you wrapped in the message that you were trying to get across, which I thought was great. And the phrase you used, work hard, people will notice. I think when I first came out of college, that's the thought I had, and I think a lot of people probably feel that way. So I think the content you gave was great, because I think that really dispels people that myth that if you do great work, if you work hard, the people will notice, because I think we all know out in the professional world that's not really the way it works. So I think this would be a great speech to give to people who are just coming out of college or just entering the workforce. I think it's very practical information. I like the concept of being your own press agent, and you gave some real-world suggestions as to how we could do that. And I also really I love to pick out a phrase in every speech. I like the phrase, I've met the enemy and the enemy is me, because I think we can all say that at some point in our professional lives. There are a few things, even though it was a great speech, I thought that could make it even a more powerful speech. The first thing was kind of a small thing, but you went directly into the story and never really greeted the audience with Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters. You could have done that midway through the opening, and it would have been appropriate. Secondly, your pace was a little fast. I think that just kind of comes out of your energy. And I think that you could have used a few dramatic pauses along with some eye contact to really make it even a more powerful speech. I can imagine you talking about it, then pause a few seconds, look at the audience. I think that could have made it even more powerful. But since you have a great energy up here, along with some a little bit better pacing, would be even more powerful. But great speech. I really enjoyed it, and I actually learned some things that I will take away this morning. Thank you.
Our next contestant, Hennekes. Michelle Hennekes.
Thank you, fellow Toastmasters, our guests, those looking in at home, and especially Kay. So I think Kay's objective today was to wow us, and you did just that. I mean, you were just a ball of energy, and I really, really enjoyed this speech. And I think what is you did so extremely well is you used the emotion and the gestures, but you did it in a very appropriate manner. So your speech really fit the hand motion, the body movement, the body language. So phenomenal job on that. Right off the bat, you caught us with you caught my interest. You used a great example. You took us rewind and then fast forward. So you brought us all in, like, what is this whole reference to lemon drops? How does that apply to later in life? And then you really brought it all back around. So super, super job on that. For an area of improvement, which is really hard to do when you give such a phenomenal speech, you gave us 3 recommendations on how to get the lemon drops in the workplace. And it was a little bit unclear when you transitioned from number 2 to number 3. So I think it would have been really good if after you gave all 3 recommendations, you went back and repeated. So just confirm to those listening that those are your 3 recommendations. But other than that, I mean, you really kept our interest. I really liked how at the end, you said, go get the lemon drops. And you actually, the one point you were like, well, am I back in the wallpaper? Am I the wallpaper reference? And then you made me think, well, shoot, I know I've done that sometimes. So I think you gave a really appropriate speech to those out there and very inspiring. So thank you so much, Kay. You did a phenomenal job, and I look forward to hearing you speak again. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. And our next contestant, Paul Wessels. Paul Wessels.
Fellow Toastmasters, and particularly Kay, I'm here to evaluate the speech, ask for lemon drops. Strong points of the speech. I always like a story. I started out with a story, and I like getting advice. So those were the 2 strong points that I liked about that speech. Story brought us into the story with going to the store with the grandmother, your grandmother. Lemon drops brought the title into the story, and then nice transition into advice for everyone out there, advice we can all take, which is toot your own horn a little bit. But I like the fact that you said, go ahead and take a chance, but the innuendos in the whole speech was take a calculated risk. Do a little bit at a time. Don't go nutso. Don't go out there and say, I'm going to toot my own horn and do it obviously. But it was the several examples you gave were like, step out a little bit, take that calculated risk, but don't take an uncalculated risk. Hit all the essentials. Nice opening of the speech. The enemy is yourself, basically. And then body, you went through the story, gave us the advice with the workplace. Conclusion, meet the enemy and it is me, so you brought that back into the opening, which is good. No notes, I can tell you've done this before. A lot of good body movement. Probably the best part and something I learned is great body movement, good facial expressions. Probably one of the strong points, good vocal variety. Very persuasive speech. A lot of confidence up here. And again, you can tell years of experience, not a shred of nervousness. No visual aids to the speech, but very inspiring. One thing a couple things that I noticed that I would give some advice and maybe a little bit of improvement. I'm a little bit more stringent up here, and I like to see some movement, but when you were moving around and it was good movement, you would back up every once in a while. You back up, and then you bring it in again. I just thought from the backing standpoint, a little bit of improvement there, but again, it's hard to come up with any kind of improvements when somebody's so good like that. So what I liked most about the speech, it was homey. You have a nice homey air about you, and very relaxed air about you. So the hominess of the speech was probably the best thing. And I learned something. So thank you very much, Kay, for that.
Thank you, everyone, for giving me a moment of silence. Our final contestant, Steve Ahrenholz. Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, our honored guest looking in, and Kay. Ask for lemon drop. What a delightful speech. I really enjoyed your presentation. One of your strengths that I always like with your speeches is your use of facial expressions. You have a whole range of facial expressions that go with the different aspects of your speech as far as what's going on. And I really do like that. I think that's one of your strengths. Another thing that I thought was really good in your presentation was your word choices and how they painted mental images of this sultry summer afternoon and going into Niebuhr's general store. I could see this little girl with her grandmother going into this old-time store where the floorboards creak and they've got the counters and the barrels of things, and to a little kid it's just like, ooh. I thought that was really good. It just kind of took me to this warm, aromatic summer afternoon. Your speech was one that I felt was in form and also a call to action, because one of the things that you wanted us to think about was becoming our very own best press agent. I thought that that's something that I have trouble with for myself, so I had some personal relevance that I could relate to. One of the things that struck me as you were giving your speech here, and I didn't quite understand whether it had something that you were trying to convey to us, but when you were giving your speech, there were periods of time where you were actually standing back from the lectern a fair distance. And I felt for myself, and sitting in the back row, that it was like there was this distance between you and the audience. You'd come forward once in a while and come towards us, but you would go back to standing back a ways from the lectern. And so that was one of the things that baffled me a little bit. And I would have liked for you to have come up and maybe lean forward to make a point. Some of these other things, rather than standing back here. You had excellent gestures. Your nonverbal communication was very strong. Some of your gestures, like a surefire way to shoot yourself in the foot with a gun. Overall, I really enjoyed your speech. I have a takeaway message for myself with it, that the attitude of children should be seen and not heard doesn't necessarily work when you're in the workplace. And my only recommendation for you is to be careful of, what kind of distance you're placing between yourself and the audience. Madam Toastmaster?
Thank you, Steve. And we're back again. And it appears that all of our contestants were on their mark. It was a great competition, and I'd like to thank all of you for the opportunity to be Toastmaster. I'm going to return the control of the lectern to the contest chair, who will announce, with the chief judge, will announce the winners of the contest.
Thank you, Sheila. Please give me a round of applause for Sheila as well for her fabulous Toastmaster for the contest today. And congratulations to all of the contestants, because I think there's just a certain amount of accomplishment in just, number one, making the choice to compete. And number two, actually getting up here to do it. Because in many cases, life happens, things just don't go the way you planned them to, and for whatever reason, in many cases, it's easier just to say, yeah, I know I said I'd compete, but actually sticking with it and getting up here and doing it, thank you so much. You're all winners in my mind. Also like to thank Kay for her fabulous speech. I don't know, sitting out there doing that evaluation, that would have been kind of tough, having to evaluate a real professional, right? That might have been pretty tough to do that. But right now, I'm up here with Carol Cormelink, who is our chief judge, and our goal up here is to let you know what the judges thought. And we're going to do this in reverse order. We're going to start with the evaluation contest. And we're going to go 3, 2, 1. Our third place winner, because they're all winners, in the evaluation contest for TV Toastmasters is Michelle Hennekes. Congratulations, Michelle. The second place winner in the TV Toastmasters evaluation contest is Steve Ahrenholz. Congratulations, Steve.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Are you ready? The first place winner in the TV Toastmasters evaluation contest is Darren Henderson. Congratulations, Darren. Is that who you picked? I'm just curious to see how you thought everybody did. It's always fun to see how the judging comes out, right? Based on your personal impression of the contest. Now, the international speech contestant winners for TV Toastmasters. Both winners will move on to the area contest on March 17th that will be held at the Union Township Library at 1 o'clock. But the international speech contestants have the opportunity to move all the way to be the best speaker in the world. Starting right here at TV Toastmasters, our winner could go all the way. That's what's so exciting about this. But first, we have to get there. And our third place winner in the International Speech Contest for TV Toastmasters is Paul Wessels. Congratulations,
okay,
Paul.
Right. Thank you.
Our second place winner for the International Speech Contest for TV Toastmasters is Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you.
Congratulations, Steve. I think we all know who's next. Our first place winner for the TV Toastmasters International Speech Contest is Michelle Hennekes. Congratulations, Michelle. Wow. Did you pick that order? It's tough. The people sitting in those judging chairs have got a tall order. And it's very important that they're here because they're the ones that really help make this contest what it is. So what I'm going to do is turn things back over to Sheila so she can come back up and wrap things up for us. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, now that the judging is over, let me acknowledge our judges who were wonderful. Rita Reed of Talk Toastmasters, Jen Elsperman from Talk Toastmasters and Ace Toastmasters, Joe Schwerling from Anderson Hills, and Joe, are you a member of another club? And the Mom Auburn Club, and Greg Savannis from Anderson Hills. So thank you all. And it may or may not be on camera when we're finished, but I am going to invite our camera people one at a time to come up here and tell us what it was like to attend the contest. We're going to start with Sadie. Yes, you are. Yes, take that off. Come on up for a second, Sadie. It's just a second. Just say hi. We want everyone to see who our camera people are. Thank you. And Sadie, what made you interested in operating a camera?
Nikki, yeah.
Nikki, who is our director, is helping you. Okay. Have you ever been to a Toastmasters contest before? Wow. She's experienced already. Thank you for coming up. And our next guest, please come on up. Please give your name.
I'm Michael.
Michael?
Mike, yeah. Doesn't matter. I'm a graduate student, and I just want to get better at public speaking, and I actually learned a lot from all you guys. So it's kind of just a learning process, and I don't know.
Well, we know. We want you back. Thank you. And our third camera person, who was hoping they could get out of this, but come on out. Please give your name.
My name's Jeremy Lloyd. I'm a student at UC Claremont. I'm here on an internship. And I really enjoyed coming here today, getting to film you guys. I'm not a very good public speaker, so it was interesting to see some pros at work. So thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. As our contest chair said, the winners for these contests advance to the Area 57 contest. And for those of you who aren't Toastmasters, let me explain that groups of clubs, usually 4 to 5 clubs, have contests at the next level. And after that, on March 29th, we will have yet another contest to cover the winners from that contest. So those international contestants, they might be here in the room. You may have actually seen the world champion. And the final competition is in Orlando, Florida in August. Doesn't seem like a very good choice somehow. I'm not quite sure. Orlando, Florida in August. We should have an Orlando, Florida in April. I think that would be perfect. But in August, and in order for the winner to win the International Speech Contest, they must defeat 50,000 other people. Now, they don't do it all by themselves. They have a series of contests just like this. Each club has a contest, each area, each district, divisions and districts, region, etc. So there are many, many contests going on all over the world, and we were part of it, and so were you. So thank you, everyone, and I would like to return to our president, Steve Ahrenholz.
Thank you, Sheila. Let's have one more round of applause for our Toastmaster today. Thank you again to Kay Fittis for being our test speaker today for the evaluation contest. I would like to invite people to come to our next Toastmasters meeting, which will be on Thursday, March 1st at 6 p.m. Our next Saturday meeting will occur on Saturday the 19th? 17th. Okay. St. Patrick's Day, that's right. That's the same day we've got our area contest, too. And February has 29 days this year. So I was trying to figure it out, and that's why it wasn't working. But please, we'd love to have you come down and visit us here in the studio. You're welcome to come to any of our meetings. We always like to have guests. I will look forward to seeing all of you at our next meeting, and I am going to adjourn this meeting of Club 9523.